All right, friends, it's BattleTech time again, as if we never left. I've been thinking about adding some more kind of lore videos to the channel, and so in that spirit today, I wanted to talk with you about some of my favorite BattleTech novels. Some of the ones that just stick with me still, at this point, more than 30 years after I read them in the first place. This is just one of the great things about BattleTech compared with a lot of game IPs, is that there were some great writers working on novelizations for BattleTech from an early point in the game's history. And a lot of these books are just really great success stories as far as how do you tell a cool story and also make people excited about playing a game. So I'm excited to talk with you about 4 of my favorites. I think I'm going to try to avoid spoilers for the specific stories of the books in some ways, but I'm not going to avoid spoilers for the history of the BattleTech universe, kind of situating the books within that history. So, if you're super worried about spoilers, maybe this isn't the video for you. Now, the first one on my list is my favorite Michael Stackpole novel. Stackpole is kind of just, a quintessential BattleTech writer. And I've always, when I talk to people about BattleTech who don't know about the setting, I've always kind of compared Stackpole to like Tom Clancy or, something like that. But actually, I think Stackpole's a better writer than Clancy is. But these are kind of sophisticated espionage and spy novels, as well as being good novels that kind of get you inside the world of BattleTech. Now, Bred for War is the one that focuses on the Operation Guerrero War between, the Merrick and Lao houses and the Federated Commonwealth, when the Federated Commonwealth split up, right? So there was a really nice setup for this novel in the previous one where Galen Cox almost got killed. That was a really sweet ending to that previous novel. And then this one kind of focuses on Catherine Steiner betraying Victor, betraying her brother, and taking control of one half of the Federated Commonwealth. Now, Bred for War starts up with this really cool setup where Joshua Merrick dies in the control of the Federated Commonwealth. And, this just kind of leads inevitably to this really interesting war. There's a lot of cool stuff about kind of like espionage and guerrilla warfare surrounding the war. And it also has a lot of interesting stuff focusing on the clans and the war between Jade Falcon and the Wolf Clan. And a thing that I like about this book, I like a lot of Stackpole books, but a nice thing about this book in particular is that it doesn't contain some of the elements that are a little bit less, entertaining to me about his writing. In particular, this book doesn't have a lot of Omi Kurita, and I've always thought that his portrayal of Omi Kurita is kind of like, not the coolest aspect of his writing. I don't think he does a very good job with that character. So the fact that that character isn't really a part of this story is a positive for me. But just in general, his writing, it really gets me into BattleTech as a kind of political and kind of like cutthroat universe. It feels just a bit like watching Clear and Present Danger or something like that, except set in the BattleTech universe. So that's real cool. Now, another book on my list of 4 favorites is just a classic, right? This is the second Grey Death Legion novel, Mercenary's Star, which is the one where the Grey Death Legion goes to this planet that wants to rebel against the Draconis Combine and helps out the rebels. And this is just a really quintessential BattleTech story of a small group of mech warriors kind of bringing together a combined arms force with limited resources, which is just a classic element of the Succession Wars era in BattleTech, bringing together those limited resources to fight a powerful enemy. It's just, to me, this is the essence of a Succession Wars era BattleTech story, and I love it very much. And the characterization in this book is really cool too. Grayson Carlisle is a great main character, and Laurie Kalmar is a nice, kind of backup character for him. And then there's also a really cool character in the form of one of the pilots in the Grey Death Legion who meets with some tragedy and ends up having a really interesting role in the book. So I recommend this one real highly. If you want to read one Succession Wars era book, it would definitely be Mercenary's Star. And if you were only going to read one novel about the clan invasion, to me it would definitely be Way of the Clans. It's actually not literally a novel about the clan invasion, because the invasion doesn't start yet in the course of what's portrayed in the book. But anyway, if you were going to read one novel about the clans, to me, Way of the Clans is the one to choose. I think this book is just incredible. The thing that is so cool about Way of the Clans is, number one, the characters are great, especially Joanna. Joanna is a legendary BattleTech character, just one of my favorites that any of the authors have made up in the course of the stories. So the characterization is really cool. And that kind of connects with the thing that the book does so well, which is that it portrays the alien nature of the clan culture, right? It really shows you, to be honest, the ways in which the clans are kind of messed up. Like, a very large portion of the book portrays the clan training techniques and, really gets your face in the brutality of those training techniques. You understand as you read this book, clan warriors are kind of subjected to some really serious child abuse. Like, if we look at this in terms of how present day culture would understand what's going on in their lives. Like, the clans are harsh. Jade Falcon, at least. The way that they train their warriors is harsh. These people are not being treated with the kind of respect for their humanity that we ordinarily treat other people in kind of contemporary culture. And the fact that the book can portray a culture that is so, honestly messed up by our standards, and yet do it in a way that makes the characters feel pretty human and sympathetic. It's just, this is some of the best writing that exists within the BattleTech universe. Way of the Clans I cannot recommend highly enough. It's definitely the best book in this trilogy, and the reason is because it is just this visceral look at, honestly, the dark side of what clan culture is all about. And finally, and this is just honestly my favorite BattleTech novel, period, Wolfpack, right? The novel that focuses on the Wolf's Dragoons Civil War. This book has some of the best characters in BattleTech. It has some of the best suspense in BattleTech. And the writing, just page by page, if you listen to an interview, there's an interview somewhere on a podcast with Robert Charette. You realize this guy is like a serious writer. Like, he thinks about his craft in a very careful way, and it really shows in his writing. He has a couple of different books that focus on House Kurita and the Wolf's Dragoons. He clearly has a pretty strong understanding of the elements of Japanese culture that he brings into House Kurita, at least from what I can tell. And more importantly, the characters just feel very real, right? Like, you get a real sense in this book of the way that Jamie Wolf is maybe responding in kind of a less than ideal way to growing older. That feels very human. And you also just get a very human sense from Brian Cameron, who's the main character, and especially from Elson, the elemental, who turns out to be the primary antagonist of the book. He just feels like a real human being. Like, he's not a great guy. In fact, he's one of these kind of messed up clan warriors that I was just talking about. But he has a very real sense of honor and, yeah, he is just a character who you understand 100%, and you kind of see a lot of what goes on from his perspective in a way that makes sense. The other really cool thing about this book is the way that it weaves events in BattleTech history, including the death of Takashi Kirita, the way that that is woven into the story of the Dragoons. It's just this kind of seamless story about human beings, but also a story about the history of BattleTech. It kind of combines those two things in a completely seamless way. And that's what makes it, for me, the #1 BattleTech novel. And if I can just add one more thing about Wolfpack, actually, a cool thing about the book is if you go through it, it has some nice illustrations. Like if you go through, several of the scenes have pretty well done illustrations showing the action, and it just adds quite a bit, actually. This isn't a thing that a lot of kind of like high-class literary novels do, but in the setting of a BattleTech novel, it really works. I can't say enough good things about Wolfpack. If I was going to recommend one BattleTech novel to anybody, definitely Wolfpack. So thanks as always for watching, and let me know in the comments what you think about adding some more lore videos to the channel. It's always going to be first and foremost a tactics channel, but part of the reason why I play BattleTech so much is because I love the BattleTech universe. I love kind of pretending to be there inside of that universe. And, I just have some ideas for stuff I'd like to say about the lore that I don't have another outlet for. So let me know what you think of this.